The owl always picks somebody.
It's me. No, we're controlling it.
What's that?
We're controlling it.
Call this meeting to order. The regular meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education. Today is Thursday, March 19th, 2026, and we are meeting at the Ronan Middle School Library in Ronan, Montana. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Christian, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Slinger,
Here,
Julia Maxwell,
Here.
Hannah Neeskens,
excused.
Madeline,
She's online. I didn't see you on there. Good morning,
Madeline
Hannah.
Quinlan, or not Madeline's not here anymore. Amanda Mills,
She's excused.
Renee Rasmussen. Here. Lisa Schmidt.
Here.
Chair Tharp,
Here,
Lydia Comstock. Commissioner Christian's office.
Here.
Governor Jean Forte's office. Superintendent Headland's office.
Here.
Board of Public Education encourages the public to participate in board discussions. Persons who wish to participate should sign the public comment sign-in sheet and identify themselves to the board chair or executive director prior to the board's consideration of the matter in which the persons are concerned. Anyone wishing to participate in board discussions will be recognized by the chair in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage public comment on personnel matters and ask that you discuss these issues in private with the board chair. The Montana Board of Public Education is a professional development unit provider. Attending a Board of Public Ed meeting may qualify you to receive professional development units. Please complete the necessary information on the sign-in sheet if you are applying for professional development units. Oh, for the record, we do have Lydia who has joined us. Good morning. At this time, we'd like to welcome any visitors who'd like to be recognized by the board. Please.
I'm Dr. Cheryl Peterson. I do have a comment, so when it's time, I
Okay.
will have something to say, but
All right.
thank you.
Well, at this time, we open up for public comment and for anything not on the agenda.
And I at them, okay. All right, I'm just gonna speak.
Also, please note, please sit in the chair there, identify yourself,
Yep.
and we're gonna be limiting public comment to no more than 3 minutes.
Oh.
Unless there's something else to be.
A bit shorter, so we'll make it quick. All right, so I'm Dr. Cheryl Peterson. I'm actually new at Creston School. It's an absolute honor first to be able to speak to you guys, and I'm gonna just go ahead and make it as short as I possibly can. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to share data-backed concerns from teachers and test administrators regarding Montana's current assessment system. Excuse me, I've had a long week. Also known as MAST. First, the testing load is extremely high. Teachers are administrating 4 or more assessments every 8 weeks. While it was stated that the testlets would take 15 to 30 minutes, many testlets take a full day or more. Makeup tests further reduce instructional time, guys. Students are often tested before they've had time to learn or even practice the material due to developmental progress. Second, our concerns deepen when we look at the data. According to the state and Creston results, ELA proficiency ranges from 0 to 11% in grades 3 through 6. Math proficiency ranges from 14 to 29%. These numbers are sharply inconsistent with our math growth data. Math is a long-established and reliable assessment resource, which has long shown our students performing above national averages and making strong yearly growth. Classroom performance aligns with MAP, not with the new state assessment. Guys, we have a huge discrepancy going on, not just little, it's massive. This misalignment calls into question the validity and the calibration of this test, guys. On a side note, we're concerned about a student survey as well. Students are being asked whether teachers reviewed their test results with them, something we cannot do because the results, guys, are not valid. The question is inappropriate, misleading, and super uncomfortable for our kids. Third, teachers and administrators still cannot access basic school-wide or grade-wide data, which limits our ability to spot trends and intervene effectively. The discrepancy between what the assessment was claimed to be, growth-based, and what it actually is, theoretically summative, but it really isn't, creates frustration with teachers and students. Finally, the technology barriers are severe. The test will not run on Macs that are only 3 years old. The test is struggling on older devices, which many of our rural schools are still relying on COVID computers. Those are the ones we got with that COVID money. Won't run on those. Chrome functions inconsistently, and students using iPads must constantly scroll everywhere. Schools without the budget for new devices are left at a disadvantage. The software is poorly designed for effective use by all stakeholders. In short, the current system is not producing valid data, is not aligned with the instruction, is not feasible for many Montana schools. Our schools deserve an assessment system that accurately reflects their learning, supports instruction, and allows them to demonstrate growth. I've provided a document that goes into detail about all the concerns, as well as I don't come with just problems, I come with answers. Here are some solutions, guys. I'm happy to talk with anybody that is interested in them or wants to talk about them.
Sure. Thank you. Please provide your handouts to our staff.
There we go. So thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.
Great, thank you.
I hope you guys have an amazing meeting. I have kids to get back to.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Dr. Welch?
Morning, everybody. For the record, Rob Watson, WATSON. I'm the Executive Director for School Administrators of Montana. Just wanted to give the board a celebration this morning about something that was announced a couple weeks ago. If you watch Montana Education News, you've probably already heard about this, but I do think it's important to talk about it anyway. It's not on your agenda and perhaps maybe a future agenda item. The insurance commissioner for the state did certify the trust, the health insurance trust. Just a reminder that required at least 12,000 employee lives and 150 school districts before they would verify the trust. By doing so, they released $40 million to get this thing started. Insurance will start up for those districts, for all those districts, July 1, and so we're pretty excited about that. Something that I just wanted to point out to you is that many of those districts are going to experience premium reductions in the first year, which is good news. But for all districts, what they'll experience over the next several years is leveling out of their premiums, so not so many ups and downs. This is historic for our state. This is also historic for our country. I speak to my colleagues in other states. Something like this does not exist in other states. Health insurance premiums are a major concern in every school district across the country. So this is an opportunity for us to celebrate that. With the introduction of the health insurance trust, I also want to mention that MUST, which has provided health insurance for more than 40 years for a lot of districts, is sunsetting and stepping aside for this new health insurance trust, and just celebrate all the years that MUST provided great insurance. But I would encourage the board maybe to perhaps have John Dorn come back and present at a future agenda to talk about the new health insurance trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Any other public comment in the room? Public comment online?
I will promote, well. Rex, you should be able to speak now.
There we go. Good morning, Board of Public Ed. Chair Thorpe, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, two comments this morning, but for the record, my name is Rex Welts, Helena Public Schools Superintendent, spelled REXWELTZ. I'd like to echo what Dr. Watson just mentioned, standing up the Health State Trust for insurance costs pretty exciting. We look forward to that. But for the need here today, the comment is really centered around 2 points of our concern around masks. And as you've heard in the past, instructional time or lost instructional time is significant in our district. But the reason for that would be that the mass assessment itself for our district and others, other districts across the state, it simply does not provide the intended data information that we require, that we need to drive instruction and to inform families and staff. And so we really struggle. We are struggling with the concept of the time commitment it takes to administer mass, for the simple reason that it doesn't provide that information that we need to drive our instruction and inform our practices. And so therefore we require ourselves to then do a dual assessment that does work for us. So we find ourselves in a double assessment period where it really should not have to take that much instructional time away from our staff. So we really would urge the Board of Public Ed and OPI to take a deep look at why we're putting so much time and energy into making this work when we have devices and platforms that do work for the majority of our state. Lastly, and just a testament across where my staff and the feedback that I get from Helena Public School teachers is I think a great quote from an email I received last week from a staff member that just said, "Mass is the most time-consuming, problematic, disruptive standardized test I've seen in 30 years of teaching in 3 different states." That sums up what we're seeing across the Helena Public Schools and nearly 1,000 students that affect 8,000 lives. So we thank you for your time in your service. Best of luck and had a great meeting. Be careful there in Ronan.
Thank you, Superintendent Wells.
You bet.
Any other public comment?
Promoting Catherine O'Donnell. Catherine, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, good morning. It's actually Drea O'Donnell. I'm Drea O'Donnell, the superintendent of public schools in Shepherd, Class B school just outside of Billings. I'm also here today to discuss MAST, but I would like to actually go back to some of the beginning of MAST. I sat on the task force that OPI developed back in 2022 to take a look at MAST, the setup of it and the design of it. From that task force, we actually came up with 2 action items. Within those 2 action items, which were providing instructionally useful information and supporting comparable annual data, they were broken down into a couple of areas. And one of the biggest things I think that we are missing in the MAST assessment right now, that I think is the struggle across the state, and you're hearing from all educational entities on it, are the score reports. They were supposed to be designed to facilitate clear and accurate interpretations of student knowledge and the skills relative to design the learning targets. They were also supposed to support assessment literacy and professional learning opportunities for teachers on how they interpret the data, and also how to use that assessment to improve student learning. The reports were supposed to have results that then they could take each student's knowledge and skills and appropriately plan instruction. So of those items that were set from the very beginning, none of them have become clear, and none of them have actually ended up being a part of the MAST assessment where it can actually provide our teachers data that drives instruction. So some examples that I have gotten from our staff is that they could either get a 300-page PDF with all the students' data, they can get a link to one student's data, or they can get class data. But MAST doesn't provide any functional effective data where the teacher can use trends on student performance, grouping students in clusters, or showing any specific skills for each range. Out of the 18 statements per test, they were pretty subjective. So an example would be, or something that would be asked as an example, to give an example of what an exemplar would look like for each of them. That would be helpful for teachers to be able to see what it is they are looking for and how they're actually scoring those. So the other issue that we're hearing a lot about is the no clarity on the scoring, or how it's actually weighted in that system, which aspects of the questions the students didn't understand is not really something that is easy for teachers to pick out. So a student could miss 4 questions and be at a level 2, where another student could miss 11 questions and still be at a level 2. So those are some confusing things to teachers. They're unsure of how the performance tasks are assessed. They were told kind of at the middle school level that they would be an argumentative or different types, and it actually ended up being a synthesis process or prompt. So it's unclear of what they're supposed to be teaching, as they're supposed to be teaching those grade level standards. What are the grade level standards that are actually being assessed? I know biggest challenge, has been that loss of instruction, but I think that's been hit quite a few times. It's not a growth test. And so our teachers and our students are becoming increasingly frustrated by this. And the test doesn't allow for individual goals to be set, which is incredibly unhelpful to us. We don't get to look at personal growth. We don't get to look at student growth. And so that doesn't really buy our district anything when one of our biggest mission statements is personal growth. How are we getting these kids to the next step? I think to end, I just want to reiterate that they did not come out and most teachers do not use the data to drive instruction because they didn't come out with the specific things that were set up from the very beginning of MAST. We have a very veteran ELA staff at Shepherd, and most of them question their teaching after each time we take a MAST assessment. And to me, to hear that across the state is a huge concern. Each time they take an assessment, they keep saying, I'm not that type of teacher. I am not that bad at what I do. And I fear that if we don't look at changing, we're going to lose teachers in our profession because of an assessment that the state has set up. So that's all the public comment that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent O'Donnell. Other public comment online?
I don't see any other hands raised, but if you'd like to give public comment, please raise your hands now. See none.
Customary to receive and not respond to public comment, but I can tell the folks in attendance and online, this board has 3 practicing superintendents sitting at around this table. And we are very well aware of and share many of the concerns that were brought up. And best I can tell you at this point is thank you for sharing. We're working on it. There's no other public comment. Move on to the consent agenda. Board members, your consent agenda begins on page 9 of your packet. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any questions or comments from the board? Any public comment? Those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Entertain a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt our agenda. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor of adopting the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moves us into item number 1. Superintendent Johnston. Thank you for hosting us here in Ronan, and the table is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mark Johnston. I am the superintendent here in Ronan, Montana. And first of all, I would like to just say good morning to the board, the guests, our staff members, and community members. On behalf of the students, staff, trustees, and families of Ronan School District, it is my distinct honor as superintendent to welcome you to our school and to our community. We are deeply grateful for your service, for public education, and for your unwavering commitment to the success for all students across the state of Montana. I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation for your approval of the Ronan Charter Academy. Your confidence in our vision has made it possible for us to expand meaningful educational opportunities for students who benefit from us being able to be flexible, innovative, and it's been awesome for our students. The Academy reflects our district's commitment to meeting students where they are and ensuring that every learner has access to programs that support their success. A key component of Ronan Charter Academy is our strong connection in career readiness and hands-on learning. Through partnerships with the Ronan Boys and Girls Club, Don Anson Ford, this year, and looking hopefully for next year, Polaris. We're giving kids an opportunity to engage with real world technologies, explore high demand fields, and develop practical skills that will prepare them for life beyond high school. These collaborations help bridge the gap between education and the workforce while inspiring students to envision their futures here in Montana and beyond. Your work establishes the framework within which districts like ours operate, and we take that responsibility seriously. In Ronan, we're proud of our dedicated educators, our supportive school board members, and our strong partnership we share with families and the community. Together, we strive to create safe, engaging, and high-quality learning environments where students are challenged, supported, and prepared for futures. During your visit, we hope you'll not only see our programs and our facilities, but also the relationships that make our schools strong. The connection between students and staff, the commitment to continuous improvement, and the belief that every child can succeed. We also appreciate your willingness to listen and engage directly with local districts. Your presence here reinforces the importance of collaboration between state leadership and local schools, and affirms that the needs of our students and our communities matter. Thank you again for your leadership, your partnership, and for taking the time to visit Ronan. We hope your time here is both informative and inspiring. Again, welcome to the Ronan School District.
Thank you, Superintendent Justin.
Thank you.
Can't say that I have ever stopped at Ronan, been driven through it a few times on the way north and south on 93, but it's my first time stopping here. And so we look forward to our tours that we're going to be having and learning more about this school district and community.
Thanks, Tim.
Again, remind all of the board members that the highways in Montana run both directions. And I think this has been a beautiful thing that we've done here on the board, especially considering when we meet in Glendive in September. So I think it's been wonderful that the strategy that we've developed to be able to get out and get into the different schools and have certain months of the year that we identify that these are going to be meetings that take place in our schools. And I know that it creates a lot of extra work on our staff and coordinating, they got a lot more than just a little red wagon of treats to haul around when we do this. And so all of the technology and working with the local school districts to make it happen. But I think this is one of the best things that we do as a board is to get into our schools. So thank you for hosting us.
Thank you.
Continuing on with my report, since our last meeting in January, at the weekly executive committee meetings, as well as other committee meetings, our bi-monthly meeting with MSDB. Attended school funding interim commission meeting in Helena on February 11th and 12th. And then attended the community schools visit in Albuquerque on February 23rd through 27th with a lot of folks who are here in the room and people from all over the state. That was a very interesting visit. Trying to figure out what sort of things we could take with and what we could replicate in Montana. But the key thing I gathered from it is that none of us are doing this alone, and it takes partnerships. And even in a significantly large school district as Albuquerque, figuring out what sort of partnerships can we form and how can we formalize those relations. So it's a very interesting trip. Had a Northeast Mass meeting in Culbertson. As I share the mental health supports that I do during my time as well. Had a Hope Squad meeting with all of the students in Richland County Hope Squad schools. They were able to take a class called Advanced Helping Individuals in Crisis, which is a prerequisite for me being able to teach crisis intervention skills for CISM groups across the state. Met with students in Ritchie, all of the 712 students discussing mental health challenges they might be facing. Taught QPR mental health supports to the K-12 staff at Culbertson schools. Last week, I co-facilitated a CIT class. CIT is a law enforcement training and also for other first responders, focusing on mental health workers and de-escalation techniques. And so spent the 40 hours hosting that in Sydney last week. And then yesterday I was in Augusta, since I was coming this far west anyway, swung through Augusta and taught QPR mental health supports to their staff yesterday as part of this work as well. Upcoming events, Education, Workforce, and Data Governance Committee is on April 6th, which I believe is Easter Monday. And then School Funding Interim Commission is meeting those next 2 days afterwards on April 7th and 9th. And so School Funding Interim Commission will be entering phase 2 of our work. And so moving beyond the theoretical and what sort of things do we want to see and what would be that perfect school and what would we like to see happening? We're going to be starting to talk dollars and cents and how to make that happen and what we can actually put into place. So it's bound to get very interesting as these next few meetings in phase 2 continue. Also within your board package, you see on page 27 are the new standing committees. And this will be in effect until our board elections and reorganization meeting, but this with the departure of Madeline, needed to slot our new board member into these. Amanda Mills had previous engagements planned for this time before she was appointed by the governor to this board, so we miss seeing her here, but she will be with us at our next meeting. So you see on our standing committees, and also note for anybody interested, our assessment committee made up of Chair Rasmussen, retired superintendent, and Dr. Neeskens, a practicing superintendent, and myself. So we make sure that we have representation from the field working on that assessment committee, and we have additional work coming up. Anybody have any questions on my chairman's report? All right. Oh, yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I just want to thank you for your report and also thank you for the great work and the outreach that you continue to do with our schools and our students around mental health and student well-being. And I just would encourage folks to, on that, if time allows, go to our Board of Regent meeting last Thursday. There was a great report at the Montana University System around the work that we're doing. And so there's really, I think, just a seamless conversation happening. I think P20 around student, faculty, staff, mental health and well-being. And so we appreciate your continued good work. We always welcome opportunities to collaborate. And finally, just a very big thank you to you for your leadership on that front.
Thank you, Dr. McLean. Anything else? All right, moving on. Item number 2, Executive Director Report. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start with a big thank you to everyone here at the Ronan School District. I think, as Chair Tharp said, we never show up with just red trolley with snacks. It takes truly a village to help us put these meetings on. And so I cannot thank folks here enough. Obviously, the superintendent. Thank you for hosting us first and foremost, but thank you so much to Josh Illig and Sandra Beals. Thank you guys. Worked tirelessly with us over the last few months to make this meeting happen. As you saw on our agenda, we'll be here today. We'll be at the high school tomorrow. So not only are we totally compromising one school, we are compromising 2 schools. So just really grateful to them for, letting us in your buildings, giving us your time, allowing us to interact with your students and staff and, hosting us last night with your school board and folks. That was just so nice, and spending time with them. It's just really an honor for us to get to spend some time with you all. So thank you so much for spending some time. That was very nice. Also, I just wanted to share a few updates since our last meeting. After you all approved 2 charter schools, Leanne and I, who's our new program officer, we went and actually visited those 2 charter schools and had some time to discuss what those expectations are, review the contracts, and really talk through what their hopes and dreams are for those charter schools, and really answer some of those questions and maybe some concerns about what it might look like to get those off the ground, both in Stevensville and Livingston. You'll see in your the information that was sent out in that sort of supplemental 400-page document of all the contracts. Stevensville is planning to launch this year. They're ready to roll this fall, and Livingston, I think like many of us maybe thought, is going to take 1 year in a delay, and they're going to use that year to plan, and they're going to try to continue to work on acquiring that building that's next door to their campus, because they think that's the right thing to do for their kids and for their program. And so I think spending that time, was the first year we've done that, and I think spending that time with those schools was really worthwhile. I wish we would have done that earlier. But certainly I think it's something that we'll continue to do in the future. So really excited that we did that and happy that that we were able to spend time with those schools. I also think that earlier this week, we had a lot of meetings, Education Interim Committee, Education Interim Budget Committee. I did give a presentation to the Joint Education Interim Committee and Education Interim Budget Committee on sort of an update on the public charter school program. They asked that I share sort of what's been going on with the board, some lessons learned. I shared how the board has sort of seen an evolution in your scoring and how you went from year 1 in approving 19 public charter schools to year 2 in approving 5 and year 3 in approving 2, and sort of what you, I think, have seen in those 3 years of not just learning more about public charter schools, but what your expectations have been, the more you've learned about using that criteria document, what your expectations about innovation are, high performing schools, what your expectations are about opening and operating public charter schools, and just what you've seen in this charter schools and sort of your expectations about them moving forward. And so I think there were no questions, so I hope they were all excited about the work that you're all doing. And I anticipate they'll have more questions for us moving forward. And then I also gave a budget presentation yesterday. Or I should say, I didn't give a budget presentation. The budget analyst gave a presentation. There were no questions for me on our budget. That's not concerning or questioning because we have the smallest budget in state government. And so I think, you know, it's probably par for the course, but moving forward, I don't think there's any concerns. For this meeting, I'm really excited that we are spending some time with the CSKT Tribal Council later today. I think that is going to be an excellent experience. And again, I just really want to thank Sandra for that suggestion. I think it's going to be a really good time spent. I think sharing time or sharing information about our education priorities, really talking about the Ronan Charter Academy. I think that's going to be a really excellent opportunity for us. And then I think also time tomorrow about visiting the charter school. I was telling them yesterday that they kind of have a leg up because no other charter school this year wanted to get majority of board members to visit their charter academy. Most other charter schools will get 1, maybe 2 of you to go visit them. And although that's amazing and great, I think that they definitely have a leg up in getting majority of you to visit their charter academies. So I think that's awesome. And then finally, I feel a little nostalgic being here. When I was very little, I lived up near Jetty Lake for a short period of time. And my mom was a teacher here at Pablo Elementary. So feels nice to be back for a little short time. So Dr. Tharp said he's only driven through here. But I feel like I'm kind of back home a little bit. So feels nice to be here. So Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and see if anyone has any questions.
Anybody have any questions for McCall? All right, moving on to item 3, State Superintendent Report. This starts on page 29 of your board packet. And good morning, Superintendent Hedlund.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Chair Tharp and Board of Public Ed members, I just wanted to highlight a few things. We have released our strategic plan and we are working on specific goals on that plan right now, but you can find that on our website and we've presented that to the legislature and other groups. I'll just really quickly cover our priorities for number 1, school safety and healthy students, student wellness, mental health and physical health, college and career readiness, life readiness for all of our students, and improved academic outcomes in our core subject areas. So specifically focusing on literacy K2, pre-K2, and mathematics going forward, really looking and excited to partner with OCHI on some ways to strengthen preparing our students in math to reduce remedial math rates and also prepare students on other pathways for the trades with our partners. And then we are wanting to make sure that we have professional development and opportunities for everyone to participate in threat and risk assessment across the state. As many of you know, we partner very closely with the Safe Schools Center and provide quite a bit of funding to them to help us accomplish these goals across the state of Montana and get that training out there. They have so many things to offer and they do a great job. I would encourage you to take a look. I know they were a great resource to me as a superintendent. And we have a new school safety and wellness coordinator. So make sure you touch base with us on all of that going forward. We'll have that person in place that can really focus in on these initiatives and make sure that we can get more professional development and resources around the state. There are some great courses on the Learning Hub as well. So our strategic plan reflects the agency's commitment to student-centered decision-making, local control, transparency, and continuous improvement. We are working on modernizing, reducing any burdens for school leaders and educators. We're working on a single sign-on to all OPI platforms. A lot of things in the back, but make it a lot easier for the schools across Montana, as well as a new website coming up. Next week, well, actually this weekend, we leave for a CCSSO legislative conference. So we will be going over federal policy with colleagues, state chiefs from around the nation and others to take a look at that. We'll meet with our congressional delegation and provide information and hear from them on what they're hearing in DC that may affect Montana. We also have a chance to meet with leadership from the Department of Education. We specifically have a private meeting with leaders at the Department of Education. And once again, we're thankful that Kirsten Baszler from North Dakota is there. You can already feel the difference. You can tell that they truly have an understanding of our rural nature and the demographics we have in Montana with her there at the helm. And we have a direct line so we can share information, just like many of you reach out to me when you see something that doesn't register quite right, or you might have a question. So it's nice to have that partnership there. And I will talk more about that and details about what we'll be discussing in the federal update. We just had our legislative interim committees the last few days. It was a huge lift. I'm very thankful to the OPI staff. We presented nearly 20 reports on everything you can imagine, from the seal of civics to data assessment, early learning, Indian Education for All updates, quality educator loan assistance, so on and on. And that was really great. One that I think was huge and the legislature was very interested in was the data modernization efforts. And we are really making headway with that. We have 4 schools piloting, and we've had 2 major kickoff sessions with those using the direct connectors. So if districts, no matter if they're Power School or Infinite Campus, choose to opt into the direct connector, it makes the data upload smooth and seamless. We help the schools get that set up. So does our vendor on that. And then they have a much more robust dashboard displaying their data, which uploads nightly, as well as access to the MTSS module, risk analysis module, which is the updated version of the early warning system. And so really exciting tools that will make a difference for educational outcomes. And I think teachers and school leaders are going to find very valuable. That information will be at the school level. Obviously, there's different levels of access. So the OPI or others in the public wouldn't be able to access your MTSS level information, for example, but it will help identify students that need intervention. You can put the interventions in there. It even has recommendations, everything from attendance to behavior to academic areas that students may need support. It'll flag them for that. It'll recommend groups. And then, so it's really incredible and interactive. That information will also travel with that student if they switch districts. So that's something we haven't had before. And obviously with 400 districts approximately in Montana, it's going to be a huge lift to get all of our districts connected. But We're excited about that. And if you're interested, please reach out to the OPI. I know some of these modules cost anywhere from $17 to $30 a student if districts purchase them on their own. And we're able to negotiate that into that contract. So it'll be free and available to all districts in Montana now. They're very powerful tools. We have some conferences coming up. We have the Indian Ed for All Best Practices Conference, March 23rd and 24th at East Helena High. We're very thankful to Superintendent Rispens and their team for allowing us to utilize the school to keep the costs down and have a really rich conference. It worked great there last time, so we are looking forward to that. CTE month was incredible. It has been so nice to celebrate with students across the state. We're always excited to attend different meetings and see these students in action. I've visited a lot of the classrooms lately. Had a great time in Billings getting to see students creating and modifying the children's cars, like the Barbie Jeeps, if you know what I'm talking about. So students that have disabilities, they modify them, for example, and then they provide those for those families that have mobility challenges. So really neat programs like that, seeing students get to be innovative and apply their skills is incredible. Also got to see interior design, construction, all different kinds of things recently. And I know we have great programs like that all across the state and at many of our public charter schools that Director Flynn was talking about. So that has been exciting. I also got to do an immersion day at the Billings Clinic, and I was scrubbed in to the OR at 6:30 in the morning to oversee a surgery with our partners from OCHI, Joe Teal and I. That was not quite what I was expecting that day, but it was an incredible experience. So I didn't know it was going to be that hands-on. It was truly amazing. I also got to visit the students that were receiving some mental health services there and really we talked to the legislature about this also, the growing need for our students across the state for that higher level of care. As we go into the STARS Act, of course, we are working to implement Future Ready, and we are working closely with OCHI and DLI. We have also got Education Northwest, who is our REL provider right now. So we have a certain amount of hours that are allowed for our use to utilize those experts, and we are asking for their assistance to make sure we get this right and we get all of the information out to schools across the state so that we can do the Future Ready program to the best of our ability and schools can take full advantage of those opportunities. We are looking into different components like Class 8 licensure with the Board of Public Ed and these partners as well to see what we can do to create flexibility so there's more opportunities and less barriers for our schools. Today you will be receiving reports from Cedar Rose and Marie Judish on assessment, Marie Judish on content standards, and Chris Emerson on the annual food service report. One other thing I just want to mention, as Dr. McLean did, the Board of Regents meeting was truly incredible. It was very collaborative. There's just so much going on in this space and such great partners right now that the PK20 energy is really exciting and invigorating. So if you have a chance to take a look at that meeting or attend those in the future, it's pretty neat to see what we have going on collaboratively and how I think we're really going to be able to move the needle with all of us on the same page and working together. So I'm thankful for that opportunity to participate with them as well. And of course, Superintendent Hoyer is great representative from the K-12 space to be on that board. And we're thankful to have Dr. Slinger and others and Dr. McLean on the Board of Public Ed so that we have that continuity. So I will stop there with my general updates. Mr. Chairman.
Great, go ahead and proceed. Your first presenter is assessment.
Yes, so I will go ahead and open the assessment update and then I'll turn it over to Cedar and Marie. I just wanted to cover a couple of things that I talked to the legislature about this week and that I know are going to come up. I'm going to leave a lot of the technical details to them, but a few things I just want to mention also in response to public comment is that the OPI understands that this is a work in progress with MAST. Anytime you do something cutting edge and have a major change, you're going to have some things and some challenges to work through. I know that what many of us thought the test was going to be, including myself in the field, is not what ended up coming to us. I know that we were not prepared necessarily when the test came out, or many of us felt that way. So when I got to the OPI, I got the team together and said we really needed to back up and take a look at what had occurred, what the challenges are, and how we move forward. At that time, the assessment vendor was surveying students, and I said we need to hear from educators. Also, we need to hear from administrators. There was at one point a survey done with administrators, but it was quite a while ago. And I hope all of you have seen and felt the changes that have been made since then. So after meeting with the team, about a year ago, many listening sessions occurred, many meetings were held. We're very thankful for SAM, School Administrators of Montana, inviting us to attend the MAST meetings so we can hear continually from administrators. And we took the common themes of challenges and concerns with the assessment and put an action plan together. So many things have already been addressed. The testing time has been greatly reduced. A lot of those components, although we know there are still some to work through. I still hear a lot about makeup tests being challenging and other components. However, I think it's really important to talk about what has been done and what is available. So I think it's really important to align the instruction and to make sure that that pacing is done, because districts that have done that and empowered their educators to provide the testlets, the appropriate testlets after they teach those standards, are finding that they can utilize these results to drive their instruction. You'll hear more about the timeline of teachers receiving results from the team, but also doing that assessment audit. So really taking a look at what assessments you're using for what and why, because we do have districts across the state that have taken advantage of this tool that we've provided and worked with the assessment team and have been able to greatly reduce their local assessments. Some of them have almost completely gone away from any local assessments and are utilizing the MAST progress reports, which is a huge savings to their local districts. Obviously, in the PK2 space, you still need some things. And if you have students that are intensive or really you're working on some focused skills, you still might need a specific assessment for that. But that is something that we are encouraging. You'll hear more about this as well, but we are working to add that growth measure. The Technical Advisory Committee and the psychometricians and many others are working on these efforts. We are updating the reports. I understand that some were worried and concerned about the reports. I know that it's challenging that parents have access to these assessments throughout the year when they used to come in the summer and by then no one was really paying attention and you didn't usually used to have to explain them. And they do paint a very different picture than your local assessments. Things like MAP, the bar for that assessment is for students to be in the 40th percentile to be benchmark. So look, your students look great on MAP oftentimes, or the majority of them. They also have recently lowered their deviations because nationally students are not doing as well in reading. So those are benchmarking tests. This is talking these results are showing if students are proficient in the Montana standards. So the results are much different. However, we do see that they align to our previous SBAC results, and the validity of this assessment cannot be denied. It has been proven by assessment experts all over the nation as one of the most valid assessments out there. So those points I just think are really important to make. I do also want to mention that local assessments such as MAP, iReady, all of those, they do not meet the standards to the Department of Education. There's no way we can utilize those. Other states have tried in the past. It does not work. And all of our federal funding is tied to our federal assessment. And this is something that the Department of Ed is not willing to waver on. Assessment is important to Linda McMahon, our Secretary of Education, and that's why NAEP was quickly reinstated. So we don't see a lot of flexibility coming in the assessment area. We have to have assessment that the Department of Ed approves, and not just Title I, but all federal funding streams are tied to this. So a couple of things you'll hear more about, but we have almost 100 teachers signed up for the teachers cohort, which I'll let the ladies there describe, but we are providing more professional development, and we're happy to send teams out to your schools if any of these areas are still a concern or challenge. The districts that they have visited have had great results and a deeper understanding afterwards. With that working group going much beyond the cap, I'm currently working with our team to see what funding we can secure or move so that we don't have to turn folks away, or maybe we can start a second cohort quickly after. So those are a couple of comments I just wanted to make before the ladies here proceed. I do think it's critical that we get an assessment from more of our superintendents and leaders across the state, because like I said, I know, and we hear from districts that are feeling good about this, have figured out ways to communicate the reports to schools. When they say progress, and you get that report initially, and it's progress towards proficiency. So obviously at the beginning of third grade, those students aren't going to be showing high proficiency. The goal is that by the end of the year, and by building on those skills, they're going to get there. And it's projecting where they are right now and where we're hoping for them to be. They do have details on the reports. Many of you have seen some of them that show specific skills that students can work on, and I've spoken to parents that find them very helpful as well. So I'm hoping that we can continue to try to work through it. I know there's challenges. I know it hasn't been a super smooth from the beginning, but we're doing everything we can to correct that. And we do have an opportunity to change and to improve this, unlike previously with SBAC. So we would love to hear detailed feedback that we can take to the technical experts and actually do something with. So please keep providing that constructive feedback. And Cedar and Marie, I'll turn it over to you.
Ladies, I just want to ask you, for the sake of time, we've got very tight schedule with lots of things and time fixed items on our agenda. I'm gonna ask you to keep this, and you have very good presentation here in the packet. I'm just gonna ask you to keep your assessment presentation extremely tight. The assessment committee met last week, and week before, we had some great information there at this, and absolutely, this discussion is ongoing and will continue. And just like Susan said, please continue to share concerns and issues with the OPI, but what's quite honestly, this table is not the opportunity for us to rehash all of that at this time. So please, Peter, continue.
I'll keep it tight.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for having me here today. My name is Cedar Rose, spelled R-O-S-E for the record, and I have the privilege of feeling like I'm back in a middle school class. Of serving as assessment director with the Office of Public Instruction. As Chair Tharp said, we have an assessment update that begins on page 30 of your board packet. I will hit on some key things today. There's additional information in there, but I'll really hit the high points. Just a quick overview on where we are of testing right now. We are currently between testing windows for math between Windows 2 and 3. Today also signifies the release of our ELA performance task score reports. So those were released a little bit later than the end of closing of window 2 due to the hand scoring process of that. We're really excited to see how those reports are looking this year. Last year there was in the field, not necessarily getting those resources that we put out. So we have put a lot of effort around getting those performance task resources out and make sure everyone is aware of them. So last year we had the scoring rubrics available for the entire field to show how those performance tasks were actually being scored. And then this year, before the school year even began, we put out additional student-friendly rubrics that educators could leverage within their classrooms throughout the entire year for students to use in preparation for that performance task aligned to those expectations. We also released exemplars to the field as well, so they had a clear expectation of what that performance task expected. Other assessments that you can see on page 31, DLM, or alternate assessment for math, ELA, and science are all currently open right now. A move from the MSAA assessment last year that was very much so math summative. End of the spring, that is now open for the majority of the spring, having that more instructionally aligned focus that we're really moving towards. Our WIDA Access English Language Proficiency Assessment has recently closed. The Montana Science Assessment for grades 5 and 8 is currently open, and ACT testing opens next week for science, math, and ELA and grade 11. The team right now is really busy supporting schools through field, being in the field, either observing, providing field support, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, and then also through our help desk and also some virtual meetings as well. I have a virtual meeting with the school to go over score reports for MAST here a little bit later today. You can go through your packet and look through pages about 32 and 33. Just wanted to reflect back on the initial move to a 3-year assessment and those limitations that we had with our summative assessment that we heard consistently when we were in that summative end of the year focus for math and ELA, leaving that gap between us what was happening in the classroom and then those assessment results. And as we've heard a lot, you got those results back before or after the school year, and most students were already moved on to the next grade level. That was really that initial push to how could we better provide information aligned to our state content standards and also fulfill state and federal requirements. And that was done through that theory of action work that happened in February of 2022, where we did bring stakeholders together from around the state to move forward and identify some key goals. So on page 34, you will see those core aims of the theory of action. I think it's really important to highlight those because I want to dive into a few streams of work that have been really focused on this spring as we continue to refine the math system aligned to a few different things. So for our key aims that we have, once again, things that we've been really focusing on, providing that instructional useful data. We've already done quite a few tasks, but I'm excited to talk about interactive reporting a little bit, which will be open to all of our educators statewide at the end of the month. Maintaining strong annual determinations. The superintendent talked a lot about that technical documentation, making sure that that validity, reliability is there, working with our vendor, with the Center for Assessment, with our technical advisory committee to make
The bell will ring in 1 minute.
to make
Please be seated before the bell rings. Thank you.
Hey, pause long enough, to make sure that that technical soundness is there. I think a big supporting thing that we talked about in January, MASC has been submitted for federal peer review. This is the requirement for any statewide assessment to ensure that it is up to that technical quality, has all of those comparability that we need, and that is a much higher bar for any of those interim assessments that districts get to choose. Talking about that building a more coherent system, I want to talk a little bit about the growth work that we're doing, really ensuring that whatever metrics that we are moving forward with align to what is going to best serve our educators and serve our students. So we'll talk a little bit about that work, and then also strengthening the trust or strengthening assessment literacy and trust. We'll talk about some of those support sessions that we've been providing, and then the teacher leader cohort. So on page 35, we have some screenshots of what interactive reporting looks like. So one thing that we've talked about for the last year is how do we provide those reports to educators in a more timely manner, in a way that they can manipulate the data in a way that's going to best serve identifying students who need additional support, really identifying which standards need a little bit more focus on, and being able to navigate between classroom, student, school, and district levels. So interactive reporting that will go live to the entire state. Any of our users in the Kite platform will now be available to go into that interactive reporting. So that is going to allow for educators to be able to access testing results the Monday after students test. So primarily before this, we've been PDF reports the Thursday after the administration week. We are now bumping that up 3 days. So the week after students test, that Monday at noon, reports will be in the hands of our educators, which we're really excited about. It's also going to provide testlet level information, including custom aggregation and data navigation between those levels. And it also is going to support that PDF printing as well. So if you want to print right out of that interactive reporting, you can absolutely do that. Still going to have all the same functionality within the Kite platform as well to be able to bundle the reports, get those reports printed, however the district is choosing to disseminate them, and we'll still have that parent portal as well for parents to be able to go in and access theirs. But that interactive reporting is a major step forward to provide that actionable, timely information to educators that we know is really key in being able to leverage this data for student outcomes. To complement this, we're also engaging in districts and schools to better understand how that growth data is used. We've been talking about growth a lot over the last year on the technical side. And before we land on a final model, we really want to ensure that what data we are providing to our schools is really supporting, first of all, how they need growth to be used, but also align with what is going to help best move our students forward. So we're currently partnered with the Center for Assessment to explore how Montana educators are currently using student growth data. And we're doing this through interviews with district leaders, school leaders, and teachers. So we're trying to identify with them current practices and challenges with growth data, and also develop use cases and recommendations to make the mass growth reporting actionable for educators for that decision making. So we've worked a lot on the technical, what's available, but now we need to make sure that whatever model we choose, that data is going to help support it. The superintendent talked a little bit about the teacher leader cohort, which we're really excited to kick off this spring with an in-person meeting in June. So we're partnering with KnowledgeWorks, who's also helping support providing additional professional development through the Learning Hub, as well to work with 3rd through 8th grade educators. The application process is now open. I think when I spoke with Marie, we're about 95 applicants right now statewide, which is really exciting. And that's going to focus not just on MAST, but how does MAST align to the bigger system of instruction? So proficiency-based learning, acceleration, standards informed instruction, interpreting MAST reports and modeling best practices, and facilitating professional development within their own schools and communities. So really a teach the teacher type of model where those teacher leaders get to go out and really be the MAST experts within their own school. Last thing I want to talk about is support sessions. So there is a map in your packet. It is on page 9 of the report, page 38 of your board packet. What we have been able to do this year is we've been able to leverage practices we already have in place. The assessment team does a lot of really robust monitoring throughout the state to ensure test security practices. The administration practices are really in place. This year, knowing that we wanted to give additional support without putting additional burden on schools, we've been able to shift some of those monitoring activities to support structures. So you'll notice the blue dots on that map are every place where we've been out and provided direct support to schools. So any districts who have new system testing coordinators who are up for monitoring can choose to have a support session instead of that. So we go in at one-on-one with their testing coordinator to really better understand how can we support you. We talk a lot about data administration. Really, they get to guide the discussion on where do they need support, and they have one-on-one conversations with an assessment specialist. Also, any of our comprehensive schools that are selected for monitoring, we've turned those into support sessions as well with our CSI team. So a CSI specialist as well as an assessment specialist are meeting for a half a day up to a day with those schools as well to help really support on that data literacy side. We've also done a lot of virtual professional learning sessions. This can be one-on-one with superintendents or testing coordinators. We've done whole staff professional development. Like I said, I have another one this afternoon with the district leadership team, and that has really helped that open conversation about how can this district or how can the data help inform instruction and student outcomes. And really the goal with that is to increase that educator capacity and confidence in using the mass data to inform instruction. Now that we have the assessment in place, the administration is solid. It's really making sure that that instructional piece now comes into play. So with that, I will turn it over to Marie Judish, who will provide an update on math science.
Good morning. My name is Marie Judish. That's Judisch for the record, and I'm the Senior Manager of Academic Outcomes and Instruction at Montana's OPI. I get the honor of bringing math science forward in our first pilot year. So we wanted to start in a similar path and looking at the theory of action that our educators across the state came together over the last year to what do we want our science assessment to look like in Montana. And as you know, in 6th through 8th grade, it is actually one set of standards for all 3 grade levels within science. So that makes it a little bit interesting for our through band that we are going to be calling it in science. There are 4 key points that we wanted to focus on, or the educators wanted to focus on. First, stronger support and alignment in the next generation science standards, or the Montana content standards as they are aligned, and including clearer cross-grade scope and sequence. I know that we have many small schools across the state that they might teach those standards all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade together and just move through them throughout the year. And that flexibility was really important to maintain for our districts. The second bullet, reducing local assessment burden by providing one streamlined system with timely, meaningful, and actionable data. So as you've seen with the interactive reporting that Cedar just brought up, we want to have all of our platforms and everything in the same space so that it is one less hurdle for our folks to jump through to try to get to the information. The third bullet, make Montana content standards align through your assessment resources publicly available and accessible to Montana educators and national partners. So we are looking at this being an instructional model more than it is an assessment model. And I'll go through what that framework that is proposed here in the next one. And ultimately strengthening educator assessment literacy through professional learning. So as we have the beginning of our math teacher leader cohort, we already have the RFP ready to go for the science teacher cohort, which will be focused on the 3D instruction related to science instruction. So I wanted to go over our timeline here so you can see where we are at briefly. So last year was focused on the planning and design of what we want this assessment to look like. We were awarded the CGSA in September of 2024, and work began quickly on contracting and developing that theory of action with Montana educators, and also moving into item development and the framework development this fall. As those were being developed, we also worked on piloting schools for the small scale pilot, which will occur here in the next month. We actually have our first training today with districts on what does rostering look like, what does it look like. This spring, there's only 1 testlet or 1 to 2 testlet per whoever signed up for it, with about 47 schools that did sign up to participate. Then we have already been working on expanded pilot planning for next year and looking at what we want this to look like in the expanded pilot moving into the statewide assessment. And as I mentioned, also the science teacher cohort, which will come with professional learning, not only live and virtual and in person, but also hub course development, similar to the model we are doing with Mass ELA. You can see here our dates for the small scale pilot. It's April 13th through the 8th. That's it's about a 4-week window because they're only taking 1 to 2 testlets. And again, this was an opt-in opportunity for about 47 of our districts. Anyone could have opt-in. We do have approximately 1,500 students at each grade level, with over 5,000 testlets being tested for these first steps. The testlets are approximately 30 minutes each. Of course, this is the first time we've done that, so we're hoping that we stick to that. Having reviewed them, I'm pretty confident we'll stick to that, with only 10 to 12 items per testlet. We have advertised what those different testlets are focused on as they are aligned to Montana content standards, and the districts got to choose or tell us which testlets that they have already taught the instruction for this year, so they would feel comfortable taking those testlets. The 2 purposes that we have here is really formative insight into student learning. Like, what does this look like, spreading this through 6th through 8th grade, especially in a formative manner, but also inform future assessment design and development, getting the information out there, connecting with our educators, having those feedback sessions, seeing what they want out of the assessment in terms of providing support to their instruction. On the right-hand side here, you're gonna see this year, I believe it's a 24-hour turnaround that they will have raw score reports on those testlets the next day. So once they have completed those, again with a short survey saying, hey, how did this feel to you? What did you like? I don't know the specific questions off the top of my head, but I could get those to you. But they will get those aligned to the standards, turn around the very next day on the raw score reports. I wanted to make sure you saw the map that of all of our incredible schools that were willing to step in and say, yes, we want a part of this, we want to see it, because we know that we saw that with MAST. When schools piloted, they had more comfortable transition into the full operational year. So thank you to them, and hopefully I will see many of them this afternoon on our training. I wanted to take a moment to look at what is our proposed assessment model. We wanted this again to be instructional. Yes, we do have to federally assess once at the 3rd through 5th grade, once at the 6th through 8th grade, and then once in the high school areas. So how can we bring this to educators in a way that helps them know where their students are versus 6th through 8th grade having no idea, and then surprise, oh, they didn't, or they did know what we wanted them to know. So we came up with more of a flexible interim framework. So you'll see the different science areas. We have life science, physical science, earth science, and performance tasks, which would be across all 3 of those. This is just a mock-up of any schools get to pick which interim formative assessments they want to do at any point in 6th, 7th, and even 8th grade, and place them as they need aligned to their instruction. So they get to choose their scope and sequence. Within those windows, they get to test out those formative assessments. Then you'll see for some of the box component right here. So we would have the 8th graders at the end of the year continue to do an 8th grade end of year summative assessment that will be similar in timing to what we have right now with the Montana Science Assessment. Added to that, we would have a required performance task at mid-year, knowing how important those application skills are. That would be composed of these areas would be composed of our accountability score for 8th grade. Now we are also working, we will present to our TAC ideas on what we would like an optional entry assessment to look like. The intent behind this is giving information potentially for growth from beginning of 8th grade to end of the year, but also what information and standards do those students still need that they may not have mastered in 6th and 7th grade, that we have some time now that we can work on those and move forward into that summative assessment. And I'm going to kick it back to Cedar.
Thank you, Marie. Just quickly wrapping up on a few things that I think are timely and I want to provide you some information on. On page 44 of your packet, there's been some recent research published on by Education First that speaks to some of the things that you're also hearing from Montana educators or assessment challenges. Some of the findings from that, and I've linked the webpage to all of the research there, is that there is assessment clutter happening throughout a lot of our schools in the United States. The survey was across the United States. It did include some Montana schools as well. But what they have found is that there is overlapping assessment systems that are making streamlining difficult for schools and our students. But research is showing that there's limited evidence of instructional value and that many tools lack transparent validity and utility. And a lot of that incoherence concluding to incoherence with teaching and learning. So the assessments are often developed separately from the curriculum. So we're seeing kind of this like discoherent system when it comes to a lot of the assessments that we're giving right now within our schools and the instruction is actually finding. And I think that the key finding from this research is that more testing does not equate to better outcomes. That was something that they really identified. And that the really thing that matters with assessment systems is that coherence and the quality. On that next slide, you'll also see a little bit about, they talked about coherence. That schools may adopt high quality instructional materials, something that we talk about a lot, that are really carefully aligned to academic content standards for our state. But at the same time, they're administering multiple layered assessments that are redundant, misaligned, and that are often used beyond intended purposes. They give quite a few examples of those purposes that are not aligned. So this is creating noise and confusion for our educators and our students, and teachers are receiving those mixed signals about what matters in learning and also what can ultimately, and that's ultimately reducing trust in assessment systems. So I think that's really important research to take a look at. And I think it also leads into some common questions that we are hearing about why can't we just use interim assessments for our statewide assessment. So this is not in your packet. This is some information that we've recently gathered at the Hope for Center for Assessment. But I just wanted to provide a quick overview of when that question is asked, why can't we just use our MAP or iReady or any of those things for our statewide assessment? So ESSA requires that all students take the same assessments for Title I purposes across the state. So the idea of saying, well, let's just choose our own and we'll report our own metrics, that will not work in alignment with ESSA for Title I. So an interim program could statewide fulfill some of the requirements, but it has to be used statewide. So there goes the flexibility of being able to choose what's already in place. And then the other problem with interim assessments is they're often easy to implement. There's a lot of flexibility in them. Teachers can often administer them multiple times and within, broad windows, but they're not meeting state requirements as outlined in ESSA and peer review around that security, the alignment, and the technical rigor. So some states have moved forward with taking interim models and trying to adopt them to statewide summative models, but they are often investing heavily in customization, which makes the programs that they're actually implementing look very different from the interim programs that they're based off of. And then slide 19 does provide a table of the federal requirements for statewide assessments, everything that MAST and our other statewide assessments have to adhere to, and how they are differing from the interim practices. So this is talking about administration practices, alignment to state content standards, accommodations. Big thing is reporting in terms of Montana content standards and the academic achievement standards, and that extensive technical documentation, which we had to have in place for MAST due to it being our statewide assessment. So that does conclude the assessment report. So I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions? Dr. McLean.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you so very much, Cedar, for the great report, for the continued great work on this. I just want to make a comment, especially as the ACT assessment window is about to open. And it is for all of the administrators. If you would please relay to your site coordinators the importance of your students marking the box 8302 so that their scores and their data can be shared with the Montana University system so that we can best support them on their next steps after high school. 8302 is the score report code. Thanks so much.
Anything else for this assessment? Dr. Neeskens.
Just curious how many educators across the state are administering MAST? Is it somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6,000-ish, or what is the number?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Neeskens, are you referring to individual teachers that are administering, or are you referring to participation rate?
No, individual teachers administering. I'm trying to kind of gauge participation and training. You said you had 90 teachers signed up for that kind of more comprehensive training. So I'm trying to gauge what the participation rate is. I mean, if we have roughly 6,000, I don't know what the number is, but that's a guess. Teachers administering, that's right around 1% participation in this training. Is that accurate? I mean, is it how many people are administering this test?
Mr. Chair and Dr. Neeskens, I can pull that number of how many test administrators we have within our platform. Traditionally, it's most of our 3rd through 8th grade teachers within our schools that within our 300 districts. Clarification on that. So the teacher leader cohort is a more selective group, as the superintendent talked about. We're thinking about ways to be able to expand that out. But there is still additional training provided to any of our test administrators, school administrators who want to attend to that. So I can get that number for you on how many teachers are administering within the platform, and also get you some numbers around those additional metrics, teacher leader cohort, and then who else is attending those additional trainings as well.
Marie, did you have something to add?
Yes, Chair Tharp and Member Neeskens, I was able to grab that number. We are around 5,800 test administrators across the state for MAST, but I'll also note that it is intentionally a train the trainer model, and part of joining that cohort will be the requirement to go into your communities or local communities and continue that spread of professional development. Along with that, the assets that are being built will be pushed into a hub, multiple hub courses to help with these exact things, so that we also have that version of professional development on top of the many sessions we've already held across the state as well.
Other questions? Member Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question for the math science. Will that a goal to eventually replace the MSA? Or will we still be giving both?
Chair Tharp, member
Yeah.
Start member Maxwell, while we are in piloting, we do have to do the MSA at the 5th grade level and 8th grade as well. But as we move forward, we would propose and work with you guys to see what our next steps would be in terms of our statewide assessments for science in 5th and 8th grade.
Any other questions? All right, just one note here, we are time sensitive. We have less than an hour to get through item number 7 on our agenda, board members. So back to the OPI, federal update. Superintendent Hedlund, are you doing that or are you handing that off?
I'm doing this and I will keep it super brief because we had many other important things to talk about. So as I mentioned, we will be in DC next week, meeting with the Department of Education and our congressional delegation to go through many topics on education. But I think one that's important is that in February, we did submit the application for an EdFlex waiver through the Department of Education. There's 2 different levels of waivers that we're working on. But within this one, if awarded, the OPI can provide district level waivers for federal statutory requirements. Our major goal of this is just to give as much control to the local districts as we can so that they can utilize their federal funding in ways that meet their needs, so they can combine different funding streams in different ways. One of the options is that schools may be eligible for Title I school-wide that weren't previously. So we are really just taking advantage of all of these flexibilities that we can that could support the districts. The department must respond to us within 90 days on that one. And then another one that is a bit more complex and some states have had returned. I talked to the department about, and they said they would like to work with us throughout the creation so it can be successful. So we're going to work on that while we're there. So I'm excited about that. If anybody has any other major federal level topics that you'd like me to ask or propose while I'm there, please let me know. We did enter into a couple of interagency agreements with the Department of Education. They're pretty technical, so I will leave it at that for now, unless you want to follow up. And also the Department of Ed recently announced a national assessment meeting. A lot of states are going through a lot of assessment changes as we are. We're getting calls, and the Center for Assessment said that states are having similar challenges and changes across the nation. So they're bringing teams together in April in DC, so we will send staff to that as well. The nominees for the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program have been submitted to the Department of Education, and we will keep you posted on the candidates and their success. And there's a National Association for Administrators Conference in Denver that we will have school improvement staff and others going to see what they can learn and bring back to Montana. We are also working closely with folks on a new and improved system that the department's working on comprehensive and regional education laboratories. So we will keep you posted along the way, but we have let them know that they're really trying to return that power to the states to select our own providers in our work plan with those hours of support that we get from the department for this. So we have let them know that we want to focus on career and technical education, that those helping us with those future ready components, as we already shared, as well as many of the subjects that we've talked about. So we will keep you posted on that, see who we end up getting selected, and would be happy to share what our work plan is with them in the future. I will leave it at that, Chair Tharp.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Susie on federal programs? Great, content standards update.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. A very brief update for you all today. On page 49 of your packet, a general update that I wanted to share with you is that we do have a lot of inquiries coming as to what's next. Not that we've done a lot in the last 3 years or anything, but there's a lot of questions about what is going to continue to be a part of the cycle of reviewing standards. Of particular interest, as you know, we do not currently have alternative standards for our students with significant cognitive delays. We did transition from MSAA to DLM this year, and those DLM standards, as well as the MSA, are all aligned to the Montana content standards and therefore the Common Core standards. So there is alignment there. However, we do not have our own alternative standards. And I do think that's especially of note when we look at what is happening with the ruling at the high school level for graduation. I did just share an update of where we have been with our different standards revisions, and finally some more exciting support coming for our math content standards implementation. Katrina Engeldram, our incredible instructional coordinator, was up in Corvallis, or down in Corvallis for her yesterday, with several area schools going over that, and she's been continuing to provide that monthly implementation professional learning series, which is live and posted for everyone to see. There is one today on IFA and cultural relevance, making math meaningful for our Montana students. And she has created an incredible connection there with our IFA team. And then moving on to ELA, we already have our next year's implementation webinar calendar and topics ready and posted, and registration is already out there. It will follow a similar path as it did with mathematics, and you'll see those dates spread throughout the year as well as the registration. We also have multiple documents up already to support, including the Montana ELA standards and coding as a spreadsheet, so that schools may begin to look at that. Basic guidance document on here's the standards. And note, that was what was there in the past. So what is coming, and actually we're in final reviews of, is the expanded guidance documents for PK-12, and then we will do the same thing with those grade level expanded content standards. I want to note that Claire Mikeson, our team, we are down to a half of a content standard specialist out of the 3, just to a multiple wonderful little baby teammates joining us and having them on maternity leave. We did yesterday also meet with the Legislative Budget Interim Committee and did a 3rd phase of the expanded economic impact analysis of the update of the content standards, which I will share forward as well. But we really dug into not only what will it cost by the district, depending on the variety of variables in there, but also looking at to implement these standards well, not only do they need curriculum embedded professional development, but also science of reading professional development. And with that, I stand for any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions on the content standards for Marie? All right, thank you very much. And the final one for report is Christine Emerson, our food services report. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I am Christine Emerson, E-M-E-R-S-O-N. I'm the Director of School Nutrition Programs at the Office of Public Instruction, and I am pleased to present some highlights of our 2025 annual report. First, I'll start with some statistics on page 55 of the packet. 95% of Montana schools offer both breakfast and lunch. 48% of Montana students qualify for free or reduced price meals, and 44% of eligible sites, that's 251 schools, provide meals at no cost through the Community Eligibility Program. Training on page 5 is an important part of our work. Ongoing training is essential for food service staff to build skills, keep up with changes in program rules, and protect student health. School nutrition programs provided more than 80 hours of continuing education for Montana school district staff during the 2025 school year. We also provide reimbursement on page 63 for meals that meet nutrition requirements. In 2025, Montana districts received more than $61 million in federal reimbursement and entitlement. The school breakfast and school lunch programs on pages 64 and 65. Participation in those programs remained about the same at 67,000 lunches per day and 34,000 breakfasts per day. USDA foods on page 69 account for about 20% of the foods used in school meals, including fresh fruits and vegetables. USDA foods entitlement was more than $6 million in 2025. The summer programs on pages 70 and 71, in 2025, we had 98 summer program sponsors and 287 sites throughout the state, providing meals at congregate sites and non-congregate locations for children to pick up meals to eat at home. And that was a new option last year. We saw an increase in participation of 2% over the previous year. The Montana OPI and DPHS worked together to administer an EBT program where 67,856 eligible children received a one-time $120 card to buy groceries during the summer months. Our Team Nutrition and Farm to School program on page 72 and 73. The OPI has partnered with Montana State University to administer a team nutrition program since it began more than 30 years ago. We fund the program through USDA Team Nutrition grants, and these grants help us provide engaging trainings for school district staff. MSU also works to expand opportunities for school districts to teach children about Montana foods through the USDA Farm to School program and grants. One of our Farm to School programs is Montana Marinara. Through a contract with Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center in Ronan, USDA tomatoes and tomato paste are diverted there to process Montana Marinara using locally purchased vegetables. There were 149 school districts that received the item at no cost to them during the 2025 school year. Thank you, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Christine. As McCall noted to me, your report is always one of the prettiest we ever see. I love the pictures from the schools and the citations, and it always makes me hungry looking at it. So great pictures of good fresh foods and things like that. Our question is, when are we going to get a sample of this Montana Marinara, since we are here in Ronan? But evidently you are remote, so you probably can't help us with that right now.
Next time.
So, all right.
Oh,
Anybody have
okay.
any questions for Christine Emerson? I know at one of my schools, we have undergone some multiple changes in our food service personnel, and I know that the OPI has been fabulous in providing resources and information to help get them trained up. And so thank you so much for your leadership in that division. Anything else from the OPI? Superintendent sign off. Anything else?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's move on to item number 4. Commissioner Higher Education report. Thing I did not note in my report is that we also had multiple conversations over the last couple of months talking about challenges with Class 8 licensure, and so I'm assuming you're going to be bringing that up as well. So Dr. McLean, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good to see everyone here. I do have just a few items, and I want to begin by thanking the chair, thanking the board for their consideration of revisiting the conversation around the challenges that we're facing in the Montana University system around the Class 8. And I know that that's an agenda item for later on. And so due to time, I can reserve any other comments that I have on that regard, except for a great big thank you. We do appreciate your continued conversations with us and our partnership with the OPI in digging deep as to what potential solutions could be. So a couple of items that I did come also to visit with you about include Future Ready. We continue our great work in partnership with the Office of Public Instruction to make sure that our K-12 schools, as well as our post-secondary schools, are ready to support efforts on this front to ensure that more of our students graduate Future Ready. One of the pieces that you have in your packet is an AP-IB crosswalk, and this is a result of considerable work and conversations with our campuses in coming to an agreement for the first time ever about how those AP and IB course credits would transfer into the university system. And then, of course, what those equivalencies would look like for the Future Ready payment. So take a look at that. It is great work. Thank you to our campuses for making that happen. Our team continues to work with the Office of Public Instruction, and we have routine meetings set, and we are working to develop and to make sure that it is in real time and online toolkit that our schools can access and support them in making sure that they have future ready programs wherever they live, and that folks know who the points of contact are at the post-secondary level on that front. The next item that I wanted to visit with this board about was the Grow Your Own initiative, which was legislatively funded in the 2025 legislative session. At this point, we are on track with 2 separate cohorts, one out of the University of Montana Western and one out of the cohort at Montana State University in partnership with Blackfeet Community College to have 52 completers come out of that, a strong investment by the state in those rural communities. And that one at UM Western in particular dovetails nicely on your charter school in Great Falls, on the Sprint degree, and will launch in Lewistown. And I will tell you that when they had their meeting in the Lewistown Public Schools about this, there were 25 people in attendance. Most of them were paraprofessionals. So a lot of interest on this front. Yes, very excited about that. The next piece I just want to touch on is the Montana University System in partnership with the Rural Talent Development and Attraction Lab. We are going to be doing a listening tour across the state in June, and I'm going to give you the sites and of our stops. The first one is in Colstrip on the 16th. The second one is in Glasgow on the 17th of June. And the third one is in Thompson Falls on the 18th. And the true goal of these listening sessions is to visit with local folks about the jobs that exist there and the training that is necessary to meet those employers where those job needs exist. And then for us in the university system to be responsive in developing those programs, and then to set a course to the frequency of the course delivery for those folks right where they live. So it's true workforce development and being responsive to constituencies across the state. And I hope that is music to your ears, Representative Rexton. Good to see you here this morning. And then the last piece I want to just speak to, especially since we are here on the Flathead Reservation, is the change to the American Indian tuition waiver. We have a great partnership with the tribal college, SKC. We have a great partnership with the tribal government here. And one of the things that I do want to speak to before I jump right into just a few pieces on the waiver change is in the Montana University System. Last week, I shared data points with our Board of Regents. And each of those data points that I shared about American Indian student achievement in the Montana University System are data points that well exceed the national average. Our American Indian student enrollment on our campuses is growing at a time when national enrollment of American Indian students across campuses is declining. Further, American Indian student retention rates across the country are at about 52.8%. One of the things that I reported last week to the Board of Regents was that at our four-year flagship campuses and at all of our campuses, our American Indian student retention rate is significantly higher than that. And so we are making demonstrable strides in the Montana University System when it comes to American Indian student success. And it's really a result of comprehensive intentional efforts. And one of those is the change that the Board of Regents made to our American Indian tuition waiver just last July. Prior to that change, the waiver requirements were that you had to be a resident of the state of Montana, and you had to have at least 1/4 blood quantum or be an enrolled member, and then you had to have financial need. The change that the Board of Regents made just last July changes that second one and indicates that you need to have proof of enrollment or descendancy. And when I visited with Miranda Berland, specifically here at the tribal government and the tribal education department, I think that folks are thinking that this is going to create more opportunities for students. And I can assure you that that is the belief at the Montana University System. And it's certainly the belief of the Board of Regents that we're going to grow access through this change. And at the same time, we're going to rely on the tribes to determine who those descendants are. And so when I had a visit with a person from tribal education, they called after our communication went out about the change and they said, how far can we recognize descendancy? And I said, that's the purpose of the change, is to make sure that we're leaning on that tribal sovereignty piece. The whole purpose of the change is to better reflect tribal sovereignty. So that decision is up to your tribe. And so we're very excited about that. And so I cannot wait to go to the tribal government today. I want to thank you for your foresight in planning that. I do have some applications for the American Indian tuition waiver, and I do have a frequently asked question sheet on the tuition waiver that I am happy to share for folks. And I just want to close with this. I think our data proves, and every single one of our intentional efforts on all of our campuses across the system proves that our campuses are places where American Indian students can come and feel like it's home. And they're making strides every single day. We know that we can always do better, and we're not going to take our foot off the gas pedal because we know there's always more work that can be done. So I want to thank you for being such great partners in that important work that we're all doing on behalf of the American Indian students that we serve across the state. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Very, very good news. Thank you so much for that work. Anybody have any questions for Dr. McLean? Right, moving on to our agenda item number 5, student representative report. Ms. Comstock.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there. I am coming off of, I think, 5,000 miles of travel since seeing you guys last. So I've been doing a lot of stuff, but I am grateful to be kind of back in the groove and back in Great Falls at least. I'll try to keep it pretty quick. My first update is just about the Montana Association of Student Councils. We have our whole new slate of representatives moving into next year. And after our state conference, so we've got Bristol, Colton, JC, Walter, and Miley, who are going to be leading the state next year, and our convention is going to be in Butte. And in addition to that, the Montana Association of Student Councils previously had an ambassador position to help kind of recruit the schools that had been lost from the organization and kind of get them roped back into leadership. And this year we are kind of reviving that and looping it in with the student representative position. So hopefully I can kind of take part in reaching out to schools and attending schools and getting people back into this organization. So leadership and the student front is looking pretty good. And then in addition to that, I just have a note about media literacy, which is kind of a random topic, but across the state, National Media Literacy Week was celebrated in our schools. That was February 2nd through the 6th, I believe. And that was presented by the News Literacy Project. And a lot of panels of local journalists were in our high schools throughout that time. And I know that my high school participated, and a lot of students kind of gave the feedback that it was important to them to see media literacy valued in educational spaces. And so I thought that was really important to note, and that's something that students are kind of seeking out. And as I write my junior research paper about media literacy and uneducated populations, I think it's really important that we kind of look to that in educating students. The next thing I'm bringing to you guys is that the last time we were meeting, I mentioned that I kind of wanted to get a larger student group together to kind of support me in this position and to gather more information from across the state, because a group like that really doesn't exist. And since then, I have made, I hope, substantial progress. I've kind of got a sample application of what it would look like to be part of this group drafted, and a general description of expectations for these students. I'm now kind of working on what the process would look like to circulate that and who would be a part of reviewing the applications, so that maybe this is something that can be in place come next school year. And so I've done a lot of work on that thus far, and I have been working closely with the Association of Student Councils and hope to kind of work more closely with the Montana High School Association moving forward. And then I've got just a few more things for you. The second to last point is just a community concern that was brought to me, which has been touched on multiple times today, but a lot of middle school teachers in my area have come to me with concerns about mass testing, about instructional time. And so it is comforting to hear that that's something that's being worked on, just because I think a loss of instructional time kind of can coincide with a loss of students or a loss of attention in classroom spaces. And so it's good to see that there's focus on that and that we're working towards that. And then finally, I just wanted to share some positive things with you guys, because in the past month, I think Montana students have done a lot on the national level, and I think it's really impressive. We had, for the first time ever, an orchestra from Montana perform in the National Orchestra Festival. They auditioned, they got in, they went to San Francisco. So that's really interesting. That's really cool. We also had a huge choir festival in the Northwest region, and Montana students were more heavily represented than any other state. State BPA took place, and our competitors are heading up as top in the nation, which is super cool. The Academic World Quest competition in Missoula was the biggest in the country. And as our speech and debate season ended, we also have somewhere between 30 and 40 academic All-Americans, which is a lot more than you would see in other states because this is only 1% of all competitors. So I think that's really cool. And 3 of these students are juniors, which is super exciting. So there are a lot of students doing things that are really big. And I think that your guys' support means a lot to them. And that is all I have. I tried to keep it pretty quick and I open myself up to any questions.
Thank you, Lydia. Any board members have any questions for her? Really cool about the younger stuff.
I really appreciate you filling us in, Lydia, on what's going on in the high schools. That's fantastic. I'm proud of our students.
I do have one ask for you. One of your predecessors gave us a lot of positive work interviewing students about their feelings on the cell phones in the schools and really shared a lot with us about the students were desiring that and recognizing within their own student population about the benefits of the cell phones, whereas initially people might have been all worried about the bands and not having that connectivity. And so, and I have shared in all the classes that I teach that information that the students reflected positively toward that. I'm curious about any follow-up with that, as there are still schools that are looking at what they can do. And I'm curious if you or any of in your peer group have read The Amazing Generation, which is the follow-up work by Dr. Haidt on the anxious generation. The Amazing Generation was written specifically for youth. It was written for the teens. And so I'm just curious if you're familiar with that work and if that help inform any of your work that you're doing.
I am not familiar with The Amazing Generation, but I would like to be so moving forward. So thank you for noting that. And I think in terms of cell phones at the beginning of the year, it was a huge change for a lot of students to kind of get used to not having that attachment that was really familiar for them. But in general, a lot of positive feedback was kind of demonstrated. And I think as the year has moved on, enforcement has definitely kind of become more relaxed over time. And I think a lot of students are kind of working their way back into having that cell phone on them in the classroom environment, maybe in ways that it wasn't at the beginning of the school year. So I think what we saw at the beginning of the year was kind of a lot of dedication to keeping that really highly enforced, and maybe we're not seeing that same level of dedication or enforcement. But I do think in general, not having phones in the classroom environment has still lent itself to something more productive for the majority of students, at least in my peer group. So.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything else for her? Right. Well, thank you very much for your report and look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Our next 2 agenda items are Charter School Committee. I hand things over to Chair Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. Is Kathy's on? Hey, Kathy. It's good to see you. Tell us what's going on with the Charter School Committee.
Chair Schmidt, I would be happy to. Thank you so much. Good morning, members of the board. I just wanted to provide you an update today on the progress of the Community Choice Schools Commission, a little bit of program and policy updates, and yeah, in the interest of keeping you on track for your tours this afternoon, I will try to move quickly. So yeah, big week, big month for the commission. So this marks 1 year of the Director of Planning position, and I am happy to report that everything we outlined was actually accomplished. So we are now completely built out for the whole cycle of launching an application and all of the oversight of community choice schools. And we have in draft review for our April meeting oversight of the application and oversight of bringing local school districts in also as authorizers of community choice schools. So today, I want to just update you on some of the latest policy that we brought together in page 84 in your packet. I have a flow chart for you. And yeah, just kind of wanted to lead you through that. So this represents all of the work that the commission has completed in the last year, as I said, to launch the application and the full oversight of community choice schools. So I just wanted to start out and note that, you know, the intent of the community choice school is to bring freedom and autonomy to school founders. There's a lot of freedoms from the Title 20 in what's permitted and what the commission could have freedom from, or the schools could have freedom from in proposing their models. So this largely represents the accountability piece of that, right? So we give them the freedom, but then they're held to accountability for implementing what they had proposed in their application. So I know this board is very familiar with the charter approval process, so I'm actually going to skip down and talk a little bit in this flow chart more about the operations and oversight and how the indicators of distress and corrective action work with that. So as I've been networking with other authorizers in this last year of the grant cycle for the director of planning position, one of the things I've been, you know, kind of rising up and hearing more about is this indicators of distress and how that works in the corrective action process. So the commission has looked into this and developed a whole process for, you know, what happens when a school might start showing, you know, just lack of progress, right? Or indicators of distress as it's included. So the commission has put together policies here to catch these systems early on. So we have 7 checklists of different areas of school oversight, from leadership, governance, finance, operations, to talent, culture, and I'm going to forget the 7th right now, but basically all of the elements that encompass a school oversight and ensuring that we're monitoring this, right? So there's regular systems in place for schools to submit documentation to the commission, but also just, you know, those informal conversations that are happening between the commission and the schools, some of the site visits or observation of governing board meetings, you know, anything that the commission is noting that, hey, maybe, you know, something isn't right here. Something has changed from how we've been interacting in the past, be it just lag in communication from a school leader, or you know, noticing student attendance isn't what it used to be. So these are, you know, early indicators of distress that the commission will be using to watch the schools and monitoring and documenting internally if anything does rise up. And at this point, the commission initiates a conversation with the school to ensure that they are aware, that we are aware, and let's start making a plan to ensure that this doesn't become big and systemic. So that is what the purpose of the indicators of distress are. Now, in the case where we can't get a plan in place and it's not correcting the action, we move into the corrective action process. And this is a much more formal and comprehensive process that encompasses 5 areas of basically intervention status. And this can start with just notification of a concern, which would trigger a meeting and, you know, acknowledgement that maybe we need to get a plan in place, to a notice of breach, to a notice of probationary status, and then potentially to a notice of revocation review and eventual revocation. So, you know, the idea is that we catch this early on and the schools would move back into normal operations, but you can see if it does come to that corrective action, it could move to revocation of their charter contract prior to the renewal in the 5-year cycle. So both of these terms, the indicators of distress and the corrective action plans, are meant to be short-term plans. The commission works with the schools to ensure that they have clearly outlined what the expectations are to correct those actions. And they are very time bound. So I can tell you the time to develop these plans is within 5 days. So the commission is taking these as urgent and things that we want to get on top of right away so that we don't have to go to that closure or revocation process.
Thank you.
The other layers of, I think, oversight that come into that are the annual report. And these are kind of those short-term measures. So before we get to an annual report and we see that a school is, you know, not meeting expectations in a certain area, this is the point of the indicators in distress and the corrective action, is to, you know, promote that success of the school in the long term and, you know, get ahead of anything before it becomes systemic. Any questions about that process before I proceed?
Any questions? No, please keep going.
Okay, thank you, Chair Schmidt. So that is the bulk of the work that the commission has created in the last year. We are fully ready, pending the lawsuit to open an application cycle if we were granted that. The other piece that the commission is working on in this next year of the grant cycle is the ready to open. So you see that in that part of the flow chart there. After a contract has been given, the school is given an opportunity to take a year of planning. And that's what we're calling kind of our year zero program, that's led by a ready to open checklist. So think about everything that's needed to start a school, from finding a school leader, potentially recruiting students, finding a facility, procuring all of your materials. It's a big year with a lot of tasks to accomplish. So the commission is currently working to develop that process to ensure that when schools open, that they're prepared to offer a quality education program, that it's a safe environment for students, and that it's in alignment with the mission and the model that they proposed in their contract. So I will have more updates on that in my next report. And finally, just wanted to end with a couple other updates. So the National Charter Schools Institute is hosting a summit here in April, and I'm happy to report that 3 members of the commission are planning to attend along with myself. So we're looking to build the commission's capacity with attending that conference or summit, just around national best practice and having some other conversations with other charter school authorizers, policymakers, educators, etc. So bringing some great national resources to our commission. And then finally, we have a meeting April 22nd via Zoom. Always appreciate any attendance from the Board of Public Education and the public. And at that meeting, we will be going through some revisions to our performance framework, as well as talking about the pre-approved assessment. So as you remember, the commission or the community choice schools have freedom to choose an assessment. So we consulted with some experts as to making recommendations as to what those assessments could be for schools. And then we will also be talking about our, more about our Ready to Open checklist and our Year Zero program. And I will provide you all more updates with those, including our revised performance framework, which outlines all of the goals and targets for the academic, operational, financial oversight of the schools at your May meeting. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Same question as always.
Same question as always, where do we stand? So our oral arguments were over a year ago in the case to review the constitutionality of the Community Choice Schools Act, and we're still waiting. So we're hopeful that we will have access to the law soon. We, as you've seen today, are prepared to implement an application cycle. And while the importance of the Year Zero is incredibly important to the long-term success of the schools, I believe we could do well to support schools if an application were open today in making sure that they do open successfully. So we have a few founders out there who I know are incredibly anxious and look forward to families being able to have more information on those models and potential access for their children.
Thank you. Yeah, the work that your commission has been able to do without actually having applications on the table is, again, envious of that your guys' ability to do what you have done. And you sound like you're more than ready if we can just get permission to move forward with it. And so thank you for that work. And hopefully we'll just wait and see. Hopefully it's the courts get something figured out for you soon.
Yes, we agree. Thank you, Chair Tharp, and thank you, Chair Schmidt.
We really appreciate your hard work, and I'm impressed. My 2 questions were the lawsuit and the performance review, and it sounds like we'll get an update next time on performance. And so thanks for all you're doing. It's really impressive.
Thank you very much, Chair Schmidt. I appreciate it.
And our other charter schools, the ones that we do have up and running for the public charter schools, item number 7, Chair Schmidt.
Yes, we have some new and some revised public school contracts. I'm sure all of you read the 400 pages. Renee, I was ready for you to offer some edits.
Nope,
Okay,
I did find some other places, but not there.
does anybody have any questions or comments on the new charter school contracts or the revised ones?
If I could just make a quick reminder that the one that you will see in there that Livingston is delaying for the year, I just wanted to mind and put that on the record. That they are asking for a delay for the 1 year. Stevensville will be starting this fall. And then all the others are same as they were before. Thank you.
And that, yeah, and that totally makes sense.
Yes.
Chair Schmidt, do you have a motion?
I am ready to make a motion.
Please.
I move to approve the new and revised public charter school contracts.
For the motion, is there a second?
Second,
Motion and a second to approve the new and revised public charter school contracts. Any board member discussion? Yes.
as we move into the phase of, renewing contracts, I am envious of the work that Kathy has been able to lead on recognizing distress in schools, in charter schools, and wondering if that's something we need to look at. Just commentary, because we're into reviewing, we want these to be successful. So that was my comment.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Board Member Rasmussen, that's a really good question. Actually, after this meeting, it's our plan to get the new charter committee together, and have some conversations with the committee about the intervention process. Because at your May meeting, you'll see your second year of performance reports for our charter schools. That you could talk to the folks here in Ronan about all the information that they've had to submit to us for their first year of performance framework and their reports. It was quite lengthy, they would say. And so you'll be able to see all that information in May, and there will be some schools that will be their first year on an intervention plan, which means that they will have had 2 years of not meeting standard consistently. And it's not any kind of intervention necessarily that has, we're not trying to, right, but it is so that we can provide consistent and more support to them, to help them succeed in the future. Office of Public Instruction has been incredibly helpful to us in supporting them. But like Kathy had said, it's really just to provide further support to them to help them get sort of to that meet standard the next time they go forward to those performance reports. You have 5 years on those contracts. That's a really short window when you think
Yes,
about these charters. So that's to answer your question. These are just to revise the contracts that are in front of you, not to necessarily renew them.
She just gave me a lot of positive thought.
Any other discussion? Or any public comment? Any public comment online? Okay, seeing none, the motion is to approve the new and revised public charter school contracts. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, that takes us through our morning's work here. Dr. Rex, do you have anything you'd like to share? Just here to observe, you don't get enough of bureaucratic meetings. We have a few minutes here prior to our recess to head over to our tours, and we're here for public comment. And as legislator, I'd like to open up if you'd like to share anything with the board.
Well, basically, we had a really good meeting. The school safety recommendations, we spent a lengthy amount of time looking at the recommendations from the School Safety Center in Missoula. And we're in the process of crafting kind of a skeleton legislation about how we might address that. That probably will need your input as well. We've had a few incidents. Fortunately, we have not had any, huge issues, but a couple of the things that were pointed out that we should consider, and that one of them was to adopt the FEMA plan for school safety, because it puts us in line for federal grants. We're gonna have a very, very tight budget in this upcoming session, so that any kind of grants that we can get, I think will be pretty helpful. One of the things that the School Safety Center is doing is a tip line right now. And they have a contract with a company that they're using, and they're actually extending their tip line to some of the rural communities, which is really great. So we asked, well, what would it cost, you know, for schools to have that? Because that seems to be one of the number one effective interventions in curtailing any kind of potential issues that come up. So that whole conversation was terrific. I invite you to look at that video section because I thought it was very pertinent. And there is also a conversation that we've had on mental health. And what we can do about that among our kiddos. I'm having that conversation locally with the health department and some other things, and I'm very, very concerned about that. The school funding situation, there is a series of recommendations that were made from NCEE in our meeting as well. I believe they were in the afternoon session of my meeting. And those recommendations are also very pertinent, that if you could look at those and what they're recommending. We don't have any legs to this information yet because the budget committee and the decennial study committee is going to evaluate those things. But I think it's important for the Board of Public Ed to take a look at that and weigh in on some of that information, because we are a collaborative group, and I want to emphasize that very highly. We value your input, I value your input, and it's a whole state effort to help our schools improve our educational outcomes and so forth. I'm laser focused on early literacy and basically, you know, because I believe that if we solve some of those issues, that our student achievement scores will dramatically improve. And I know board person Rasmussen agrees with me on that score. Because we really got to address that and monitor that. And thank you, Board of Public Ed, for setting up the parameters for that, the tools for that, and so forth, because you played a very integral role in helping that move forward. So let's see, what else did we cover? I think those are the major points of the work that we did. I have, and you'll hear my comments online if you look at that, I have considerable concern about masks, as is laid out by some of our constituents as well. So I would like to see that more instruction, less testing. We've got to figure out how to make that work. I think Rob Watson had some very good information. Hopefully you've had a chance to share that, that we ought to consider. But I feel that if we concentrate, because we need to sort out what's going on in K2 from the rest. And I tried to point that out in the session that, you know, what's going on in MAST has to be connected to what we're doing in K2. And we have to have some sort of a seamless process for that and make it somewhat friendly for teachers. Power School is doing their test dashboards up in Kalispell for MTSS. And that's really cool. I'm anxious to see what that's going to develop. As PowerSchool hopefully can take all this data and help teachers make course corrections during the year. And that's what bothers me about the math test. How do you make course corrections? Well, what if they miss those standards? Then what do you do? You know, I really believe we've got to answer some of those questions and make our assessment system seamless and helpful to teachers, not make it burdensome. So I know you've got a 2-page, 4-page piece on it. I have it in my hand and I'm paying attention to it however I can help.
Thank you so much. As this follow-up, at that trip I made to Albuquerque, I had a lot of time on buses going around Albuquerque that I bent the ear of Sarah Music quite a bit. And then once we got back from Albuquerque, I was able to connect her with the people that I work with on the Behavioral Health Advisory Council. And we put together a larger group meeting that included some of our people and trying to make those connections because, you know, everybody has different resources and availability for behavioral health, and it absolute one size fits all model is not going to work. We have very different needs and resource available in the rural. So thank you so much for your work on that. Taking a look at our agenda here, our next item is we're going to be traveling to the CSKT Tribal Complex. You should have this in your black folder, so we know who we're going to be meeting with. So our schedule has us traveling there. We're going to meet with them at 11, be with them for about 45 minutes, coming back here. And then we will have a working lunch. Board members, the lunch will be provided. And then we're going to continue with our strategic planning that we started at our last meeting, have been ongoing. So we'll be discussing our mission and vision statements, talk about our next steps. And then, so that will be taking us from about 12:15 until close to 2. And then, so what we're going to be doing for anybody participating online is we are going to, the board will form, we will recess. And then we will reopen the Zoom and the YouTube link at 2 and reconvene at 2 o'clock with a time certain event with item number 8 with the licensure committee. And then we've got a full agenda cranking us through the balance of the day with that. So any board members have any questions on what the plan is? All right, with that, we will be in recess and we will await direction as to where we go next.
That box right here is our transportation director. That will be taken away. We have a